You're listening to the Business Marketing Show, episode number 70. You can find us at businessmarketingshow.com, on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Stitcher. Hi everyone, this is Keay-Smith from the Business Marketing Show here with my co-host Brendan Tully, and we have a special guest on the podcast today. It's not just Brendan and I talking our magic that we normally do that everyone loves so much. We've got someone who's going to add some spice to our conversation. So today we have Peter Engelhardt. And Peter is a brand consultant and entrepreneur focused on strategic branding and design for small to medium-sized enterprises. Peter is the founder and driving force behind his business called Creative Brew, and he works directly with entrepreneurs and business creators who want to transform their businesses into industry-leading brands. Peter and his team have developed the world's only interactive e-tool called Plan to Brand that we'll be having a chat to him about today. And he lives in Melbourne, Australia with his wife and daughter. Welcome, Peter. How are you?
Yes, very good, Ed. Very good. Thanks for the great intro there.
You are welcome. And Pete, you and I met last year in Tokyo. We were presenting at the Netpreneur Summit together. Well, not together, separately, but on the same schedule. So, and we had some good catch-ups and had long walks together in the park. We didn't really have long walks together in the park. We had a long walk to a sushi, it wasn't a sushi restaurant. It was what was it that we went to one night? It seemed to take forever to get there, but it was fun anyway. So thanks for coming on the podcast, because the subject of branding is bandied around a lot, and it's good to get some clarity to what that actually is and what it means, and is it relevant to businesses that are small or big or large, and how does it all work? So let's get stuck into that in a minute. But before we do that, Brendan, how are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks, Ed.
I can't forget about Brendan. He's the equal half to this podcast. Without Brendan, this podcast would not be possible. So thanks for coming on, Brendan. Thanks for having a super fast internet connection where you live compared to Peter and I's internet connection. Just like to make us look bad, but that's fine. We can handle it. So Pete, let's dive back a little bit into the past. Let's go back to where you came from and how you got to the point of where you are now. What were you doing when you sort of left school into college? What sort of work were you doing that led you into the place that you are now?
Oh, I was, I remember this really clearly. I was at high school in a suburb outside Melbourne here, and in year 12, I just didn't know what to do. But the only thing I was really clear on was I was never going to wear a suit. I hated ties, and so therefore, accountancy and any business degree was out. Yeah. So that left acting, and I'm a bit shy, and so then it was the arts, and I wasn't even good at painting or drawing. So what was left? Graphic design. So I ended up moving all the way to town, and I did it was only a diploma back then in graphic design, and that was pre-computers. Mm-hmm. So that was great. And I literally stepped out of there and worked in about 2 places. Nothing great, just in the back rooms of printers doing some basic design and cut and paste things. And then after some travelling, I came back. And it was in 1986, I started my own business, and what's that? That's 30 years.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I've had my own business since then. And I think about 3 years into that business, Apple Mac released their first computer for designers. Mm-hmm. They had computers prior to that, but then it was the Mac 2, I think it was. lead weight, really. But while it sat in the corner of the office, we didn't know what to do with it. We could switch it on.
Yeah.
And there it was just weird, And then one day we're sort of doing typesetting in it and running that down and getting the type put out and bringing it back and pasting it up. And eventually, by about the year 2000, we were building internet sites, and the world had just changed, in that 14 years. Absolutely nuts. The 90s, there was a lot of work around. And so we were sort of chipping at the heels of the bigger agencies. In fact, we worked with lots of agencies, did a lot of corporate work.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
and that was still all mainly focused on graphic design, or you hadn't moved into the world of branding per se at that stage?
No, we'd moved into the world of marketing.
Okay.
A designer, just ends up by default sort of helping clients think issues through. They want a brochure. Okay, why do you need the brochure? What's the purpose of it? So, and how are you going to get it out there? What's your strategy to, are you got a list, or what are you going to do? So we got into marketing, and then it was, the year 2000 onwards when the term inbound marketing, as opposed to push tactics, really became a big part of our business. So internet and email marketing, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. I do remember when those apples came out, because I had one. It was 1987 or 88. I think I got my first one. And it was great. Look, it was pretty amazing what you could do with it, considering what else was around at the time, particularly with the mouse interface and everything like that, and the way it, created graphics and various things. It was pretty clever for its day. I mean, obviously look at it back now and you think, well, that's a bit of an antiquated piece of machinery, but back then it was cutting edge. I'm sure, we'll look back at stuff we're using now in 30 years' time and go, look at that old piece of crap, So as the internet's grown and there's been more demand for these types of services for graphic design and for marketing and for website design, it brings about that whole question about branding for companies. And I hear this terminology coming out of businesses all the time. I'm building my brand, I'm working on my brand, I'm developing my brand, and it gets used a lot. But I really don't think most people really understand what that entails and what's involved. And so I'd like to get your perspective of what is building a brand, or what is developing a brand.
Well, look, a brand really, it's so intangible. It's quite, up until you start producing a logo or website. A brand is a gut feeling that a customer is left with whenever they deal with you. And that doesn't matter if it's over the phone or when they're surfing the website and come across your website, or they get an email from you. Mm-hmm. Or they listen to this podcast and the casual way you're having a chit chat. Someone's going to form an impression about you and me, and that all becomes part of the brand. And you can't really tell the world what your brand is. You can draw parameters around it and influence it. Mm-hmm. And encourage, and hope that people get what you're doing and understand the underlying purpose and passion and values and everything else, and who you're targeting. And you can influence all of that. But at the end of the day, the consumer is going to form their opinion. And it's these, multinational, successful brands, or the Fortune 500 companies that are really good at understanding that, and at every touch point being consistent around what it is they want the consumer to be left feeling.
Yeah, so it's the experience around how they deal with it. And I mean, one that often comes to my mind, and probably a lot of other people, is Apple. So Apple's probably an example that we could work from, because we've already been talking about them. So you can go and buy a computer from, multiple other computer brands, that are typically half the price of going and buying a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air. So, what is it that gets people to spend twice as much money on something else? It's basically the same thing. You could argue the point that, one bit of software is better than the other or vice versa, but they're pretty much the same thing. So people are handing over a lot more money. Is it based on the fact that they have a good brand experience, or what's your thoughts and opinions on that?
It's lots of things. It's layers of things. First, they are clear on their point of difference, which is sort of, I talk to about 7 foundations that make a brand, and point of difference is one of them. Yep. And certainly that point of difference has to be relevant to the target market. You just don't go, this is my point of difference. You have to, there's a process to go through to make sure it's viable, yep, the market wants it, and it's unique. But, they're clear on their point of difference, their purpose. They're very good at influencing the subconscious. They talk to, all their advertising talks about what the customer wants, or what, and how they're going to feel at the end of the day. They don't just say, here's a computer, do you want to buy it? They're more selling a lifestyle than a computer. And that's what everyone buys into. And then that cleverly, in our busy lives, the really cool thing about, if you can build a brand that stands for something, it's a shortcut in people's lives. Like, I won't go into the city and traipse around 5 stores looking for a pair of jeans and waste 3.5 hours. I know that G-Star jeans I love. I think I look good in G-Star jeans. I go straight to G-Star.
Okay.
Now, that's a shortcut in my busy life. That brand has won that corner in my brain that talks about clothing, and by default, it makes my life easy. I go off to G-Star and I don't have to think hard about it. And so when you do earn that position and influence the brain in that sort of way, people will come to you automatically without even cross-quoting or, I buy Apple Macs all the time. I didn't realise they're 2 or 3 times dearer. I know they're a bit dearer, but, I've seen other computers that are just as dear. So price doesn't come into it when you've got a brand that stands for so much intrinsic value, because they are just the same computer as everyone else's. They come out of the same factories.
Yeah, often, the components, everything often from some similar places.
Pretty much.
So it's all based around that. So when a small company that's just getting started starts having a conversation with you about branding, because say we have people say to us they've just spent $20,000 or $50,000 on branding. Sometimes alarm bells go off, admittedly. Go, okay, what have you just paid for? And have you just been duped by someone to hand over money for no particular reason? But without knowing all the nitty-gritty details, I couldn't make a comment. But when people come to you in that scenario and say they want to start building their brand and creating brand awareness, what sort of processes do you work through with them?
Great question. We take people through a very structured process that we've designed, but it's not easy. So we've created 7 steps, and the whole reason is to ultimately find a point of difference and explain it. Mm-hmm. And you can imagine that's very hard if you're a cleaner or you're a physiotherapist or you're an SEO company. Or even an electricity company, a lot of services out there, a lawyer or whatever, what's their point of difference? So you have to think really hard about, what does the customer want? What do they need? What's wrong in the industry? So I sort of go back, help people with their purpose. That's the first step, right? If you understand purpose, which can come from the problem you see in the industry and how you're solving it, then you can start to build your business and change things in your business to solve those problems better than anyone else. And we recently did a cleaning company, and they're a $20 million company. They want to be a $100 million company.
Yep.
And it all comes down to customer service in their industry. That's the only thing they can do. So we take them through a process, but it has implications. You don't just say, okay, you're going to be the best at customer service, let's put that on your website. You actually then question them and help them build into the business evidence that's going to manifest itself in the end, evidence and actual change things in your business. So in the end, you are the best at customer service. So you're deciding at a business level what to do within the company that the brand can talk about.
Yeah, and often that can be a very, very deep cultural change as well, can't it? Because
that's right. So just taking this, okay, I've got a brand, and I'm going to change my brand, or change my logo. Well, that just goes over my head. I don't get that. So we really help companies position themselves by thinking about who they are as a brand and what can they do better. And everything I talk about and help companies with, it's internal. It steers the ship. It helps them find the right staff to work with. It gives them the priorities they need to address each day and the things they need to say yes and no to, because they've decided they're going to be the best at this. Now, that could be lowest prices, you can imagine Bunnings,
Mm-hmm.
That one tagline comes from their position in the market, and everything they do has to deliver on lowest prices. So, every job description, every function is all about systems, more processes, get it in cheaper, et cetera, et cetera. It drives everything they do. And then they'd get a cheap-looking logo that's sort of, it's not a Mercedes-looking logo. It backs up what the brand stands for. So there is a lot of work involved, because it's that internal stuff, and then how do you express it? How do you get the staff to understand it? How do you bring that down to one sentence and then bring that down to one word? Because then everyone's trying to ultimately own that mind share, that one word, like Volvo is safety or whatever. When you can get known for one word, and when the staff get that, and they're talking at dinner about the business they work for, they'll end up speaking about the brand the same way the managing director does, because everybody in the business is your brand. So you have to get it to filter through everywhere. So the clarity and the focus around what is your point of difference, et cetera, it has to be so laser clear and succinct and unique from every other business. And that's why it's sort of expensive, because you're researching, you can go on your gut feeling or your instinct, but often there's a bit of research in there, et cetera. So that's why it does tend to cost a lot of money, $20,000, $30,000 to come up with some brand foundations, is quite normal.
Yeah, and look, say it's the price isn't the issue. That the question that I always have is, are they actually getting their money? Like, I think there's a lot of companies out there who say they're branding experts, but in my experience in talking to them, they really seem to not have the first clue about what it is. And so that's my concern. Right. So how is it someone differentiates between, how do you know you're working with, other than you, of course, Peter? How does anyone know they're working with the right company?
It does my head in. I don't think. I'm not big noting myself at all. I've just got obsessive about this for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and I can't believe what people are saying out there about how they're going to help you grow your brand, or that, designers saying they do branding. Yes, they do logos. And I've seen people say, $300 and I'll come up with a positioning statement and your target market and, 3 other things. And it's like, well, that's just, you found some buzzwords and something and given it back to the client and gone there. And it won't work.
No.
None of it. So who do you go to? It's really hard. You have to, I think, have you have to have an understanding yourself first. What are you asking for? What are you going to get when you finish working with through that process? And will it change things? How will it help the business? You have to understand branding to then go out and, like we understand the quality of whether it's a meat pie or the way jeans are put together. So we know what we're looking at when we're in a store, and we can judge the value of lots of things, but we don't understand branding, so we can't judge the value.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in our course, which is this online tool, in fact, it's so heavy with content because we felt people, when they do the course, they're really clear on what a brand is, how it can help them, and it's about educating them so they understand why it's like a university course on branding. And it empowers them to then go, okay, I'm building a brand now, not running a business. And it would take me, 1 or 2 weeks of sitting down with someone to get them to learn this, or they can do the course. And obviously it comes at a tenth of the cost because they're not dealing with me. So we built this whole gigantic online tool to help people understand branding, do a fair bit of it themselves, and then if they have to go off and ask someone to just help more with the smarten up the copywriting because they just weren't that good at polishing off their positioning statement or their brand promise.
Yeah.
You can find someone to help do those last little bits.
Yeah.
But
it looks very impressive. And so I remember a little while ago spending an hour or so with you, going through the actual course that you'd created. And I'm not often impressed by courses and how they're put together, but I've got to say, without blowing smoke, what you put together is extremely, extremely intuitive to follow, but really well put together, nicely laid out. So I think you've done a super job. So just to be clear, because looking at the Plan to Brand website, you can do the course through that. Am I accurate in saying that?
Or is all that... right. Yes, yeah, you can. But right now, the Plan to Brand website is a landing page. I haven't really advertised it much. It's sort of keeping a low profile.
Okay.
Where in about a month we'll have a very big website that explains everything, why you should do this, the benefits you'll get from it in real plain English. Like, we've really tried to demystify it, so strip out the jargon and put it so people can understand what they're getting themselves in for, what they'll get out of it, and with videos and everything, because I just felt, I knew the landing page wouldn't convert people, but as I've been trying to find partners out there and other people, I needed something up.
Yep. So
yes, they can do it, but in a month's time, there's going to be a much better website for people to decide truly if it's for them. I'm not into sort of conning people and saying, hey, you're going to double the size of your business if you do my course. Start now. It's just, there's so much of that crap, excuse me. That's not me.
No, that's fair enough. But at the moment, what we'll do in the show notes, I'll put a link to your Creative Brew website that has the e-course and workshop link in there, so people can start looking at that. And it says you're taking enrollments from the 30th of April last year, so you're still running the course now. It's just there's no they can just basically start doing the course at their own pace, and there's no okay, cool.
People can start doing the course at their own pace, but I think I'm going to introduce a sort of a fortnightly webinar for support.
Okay.
And that's not explained there, but it will be in the new website. So it's because it's something at this level, they really do need to bounce things off people, ask and whatever. And then we're actually lining up a lot of brand consultants, writers, other people that want to that you can contact if you're in Perth. We'll be looking at someone in Perth who might be a contact and a design company or a marketing company, and if people want help from someone local, they could go into our website, find out who's in their state, and maybe organise a 3-hour meeting just to help them through the hard part or whatever. So all of that's being thought through right now and developed.
Okay, fantastic. And I think that's a great thing. And Brendan and I, we often have similar sort of scenarios, and I'm sure you do, Brendan, where people just say, "Oh, I want SEO."
Yeah.
Can you do SEO for me? Okay, right. Well, that's like, it's no different to saying, can you do branding for me? That's a huge chunk. What's your experience with that, Brendan? And when you have that sort of question, how do you deal with it?
Yeah. Well, it's a funny one. I mean, it's taken me many years to understand brand, and like the best definition I've ever heard is it's what people say about your business when you're out of the room.
Yes, so true.
But it's interesting because traffic is so cheap today, right? So you can buy traffic from ads. So you can run Facebook ads and AdWords ads. So by and large, the traffic problem is solved with money. But it's easy to get traffic, but it can be hard to sell people and differentiate yourself. And one thing I know you do as well, Ed, like we work with Matt at Photography Project and do a lot of commercial photography. We'll have clients do commercial photography, and that increases the conversion rate, like the number of people who are emailing or calling or buying. But that really core, a lot of businesses lack that core, the fundamental, that the brand, like what makes them different. Why would someone choose them as a dentist as opposed to the other 10 people in Google? And I think it's interesting, like at the small business owner level, there's still that kind of idea that the brand is a logo and your design and your set, and as opposed to what Peter's talking about, like it's the foundation, the fundamental core of the business, what you stand for, why you're different, why someone should choose you. And the Apple example is perfect. Like Apple make good looking laptops that work, that are reliable, and versus a Windows PC that breaks and you have to install updates and it's sluggish and it crashes. Like that's two brands, it's like night and day, those two brands. So I think it's interesting as more and more businesses move online and customers have more choice. I mean, you see it in retail, right? Like people are saying retail is dead. Well, it's not really. You go to an Apple store, there's queues out the door. So retail isn't dead, but business is becoming more and more competitive. And I think like people like Peter, there's such an important role they play in business that it's becoming more and more important, and the businesses that don't get it, they're going to be squeezed. I think. I don't know what you guys think or what you're seeing in the market, but that's certainly from my perspective, is the businesses that grasp this stuff, they're really the businesses that win. Like you can get a business at the top of Google, but that doesn't mean anything if the guy in one spot beneath them is better at positioning and better at selling.
Yeah, and better at converting. I mean, you nailed it. One of the questions it's the whole component. One whole component is all about why should someone buy from me and not the competition? And it's actually really hard to answer that question. You can say something, but in our process, you have to justify it so it's real. You don't just say you're the best at this. You say, well, why? Because we've created and it can be a process, a 3-step process or something. There's lots of ways to think about it. So I do believe that, 80%, I think, I've read figures, 80% of the content out there doesn't get read, and you go to the average, I don't want to be, call designers or marketers out here, but you go to the average person, I say, you need a website and you've got a blog, but what's the point of blogging if 80% of it's not going to get read? Now, it's only going to get read if it's unique, if it's solving a problem, if you've got a really unique perspective on something. And that's why understanding your purpose and the unique thing that you're changing and challenging in the business, and that's why and when you can talk to that in your blog articles or content, people will listen. But if you're just sort of automatically pumping out stuff because 15 years ago Google wanted to see content updated every day,
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
being
exactly.
misinformed, you know. It's not going to work like that anymore. Unless you're incredible now, it's very hard to stand out. And that's what we do in the course, just challenge you to just be a better business, be much more unique.
Yeah, yeah.
And otherwise, boy,
Well,
you're not
yeah.
gonna-
So that's a very good point because several years ago, YouTube changed a key component of their algorithm as to where videos would rank, and they changed it based on views to engagement, so how long people would actually spend on the videos. Because if they're not watching the videos, it doesn't matter how many people actually go and view the video. But if they only watch like the first 10 seconds or 30 seconds of it and then they don't watch the rest of the 5 minutes or however long it is, it means it's not engaging to the customer. So same with anything you do with your website or with any type of information or content you're putting out there, it has to be engaging. And the thing that really irks me that I hear a lot is the whole repurpose of content where someone, they'll do a blog post and then they'll stick the same thing on Facebook and then they'll stick the same thing, everywhere else. From an article that was written 5 years ago, and I think, well, I'll just reuse that again and stick it in different places. It just doesn't work. You've got to have unique content for people these days because they're much, much wiser and savvier with what they do on the internet compared to even 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's and it is tough out there for small businesses. All of time to even do a course like mine is people find it tough to find that time, but I believe it's time well spent. But you've got your Nikes of the world or the best websites out there. It doesn't matter if it's David Jones or Amazon or Apple. The consumer is really used to a great experience out there. They go online, they order from Amazon, and they expect every other interaction on the internet to be of a similar level, just work and and the information that you want's just there at the click, the right information. And so little businesses have to compete at that professional level, when they produce their online websites and content and everything. And sort of just with little thought throwing up a website, it won't engage anymore. The millennials, they're not putting up with it. They know what they want. They can cut through all the crap out there and narrow into exactly what they're looking for, as fast as. And they only want to work for companies that have a purpose and that are heading somewhere. They're now questioning who they work for. So, thinking about being a brand as opposed to a little business even gets down to, retaining good talent. So,
Definitely.
a course like mine's more for people really serious on growing, really serious, rather than just running a day-to-day business. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Seriously,
But I'm saying it's a good place for people to start because, everyone comes into this experience at different levels. And if they're bootstrapping and they don't have 15, 20 grand to pay a branding agency to help work through things, this is a fantastic step because it does guide them and hold their hand, and you're constantly improving it and adding to it and refining it. So in that sort of way, they can at least get the benefits of your knowledge and years of experience through this. And then at some stage down the track, they may start to reinvest money into, consulting with people like yourself to actually get it a much more of a deep dive done. Your thought process, because what isn't in the course and can never be in a course is that in the moment thought process way of consulting that you just can't emulate other than being in the room with someone. So, but it's a very good start. And I think if people are, concerned about that their brand is lacking and where to go through, then it's a very good place, to get some information from. And just as a notification and what's the word? We don't have any affiliation with Peter. We don't make any money telling people to use Peter's course. We only recommend things that we like. So And I know from seeing Peter speak, he certainly knows his stuff. So, Brendan, have you got anything else you would like to ask Peter while we've got his captive attention?
Yeah, I guess like someone listening to this, what's a good indicator that they need to work on their brand? I think, like one that I see, I don't know if you see this, Peter, but like people, there seems to be this knee-jerk reaction that sales are down. We need to do something about online marketing. We need to redesign our website. But I think often that's more a case of there is some problems with the brand or the core fundamentals of the business. So I don't know. Is there some indicator that this is something that people should work on, or how often should they be looking at their branding and these kind of fundamental components in their business?
Yeah, look, great question. I think you sort of nailed a separate point that I'll bring 2 points together. The difference between a business and a brand is most businesses go out there and they start, and they build a website and they just start, and then they jump from tactic to tactic. Oh, I need Facebook ads. Apparently I need SEO. I need to get higher in the rankings, and everything's a tactic. So whereas any successful company, they have a plan, and a brand strategy is in fact a plan at the end of the day that guides the bigger picture. So if you don't have a plan, if you find yourself just knee-jerk reaction to the way you're promoting and marketing your business all the time, then you need to be thinking about this, because after sort of thinking through who your competitors really are, who your target market really is, who you should narrow down to, what that core message will be, then you can start to more tactically go, okay, how can I reach them? None of them are on Twitter or LinkedIn. All those people are definitely Facebook people. Okay, great. What are we going to do that's different to the advertising everyone else is using? So you start to use the intel you've built up by doing the course or a process of thinking strategically and positioning yourself, and you start employing 1 year type of strategies and looking back at the year and see how you went, rather than just knee-jerk reactions and tactics. So yeah, that's what I'd say to that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely makes sense to me for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm just one other thing, because it's such a deep subject, and I know I've tried this. I've put ads on Facebook. No one reads them, especially on. People want that quick solution ever on Facebook. I find everyone just wants to learn the secrets to
a sugar hit
or something. Yeah, sugar hit.
Yeah, sugar hit.
So even marketing or promoting my product is a challenge, right? So we looked at it and went, what can we do? So we're doing a podcast. Now I've got sort of 7 or 8 fundamental, very clear different steps, whether it's purpose, whether it's positioning or understanding target market, et cetera. And so what I'm doing is putting together a podcast. Then from that podcast, I'll reach out to Simon Sinek of, trying to contact him right now because he's the why man and he's the first person for purpose.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to world leaders in those areas because I just feel I've got enough to say, and I'm just, dogged at this. I really want to do this. So where there's a will, there's a way. So I'm going to those. So every month I will speak to one of them about the step in the process and go through the steps over the months. Now, after that podcast, there'll be a live Facebook thing about a fortnight after the podcast. And so you can sign up and follow it. And so you can join in on conversation, and hopefully the guest, depending on their time zone, will also be on the live Facebook chat. And all of this is being followed by an editor. And so that's all going, and everyone's comments and what went down in the live webinar and on the podcast will get written into the chapter. And at the end of the year, we'll have a really comprehensive book with not just my opinions, but other thought leaders in that space. And people will have been following it, and, the book will get sold and all the fees, all the profits go to Kiva to support sort of, entrepreneurs that need support. So I've had to come up with strategies like that to promote my business, because promoting the old ways doesn't work anymore. So you really have to be creative nowadays. I'd say to any business out there, find a really good creative partner who can, just push the envelope a bit, because you have to be outstanding now to get above the noise.
Definitely, yeah. Too true. Well, that's exciting. Well, we'll keep people up to date when that happens, and we'll put the link to your podcast when it starts on our show notes for this podcast. So, yeah, look, it's a short conversation on a very deep subject, but hopefully it'll start pointing people in the right direction, and they can certainly go and check out your website. So we'll put links. Best way to find you is creativebrew.com.au. That's probably the best place.
Yeah, and you can contact me on the form there through info or whatever. I get that.
Yep, fantastic. Yeah. We'll put the links in the show note for that. Anything else before we go, Brendan? We'll let Peter go.
All good.
Awesome. So thank you for your time, mate. That was fantastic. Hopefully we'll get you back on another time once you've had some other things come to fruition with what you're working on. But it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. So
it was an honour to be asked. So thank you, Ed. It was a great meeting in Japan. I really had a good time there.
Yeah, likewise.
Okay.
All right. Thanks very much. Thanks, Brendan.
Thanks, guys.
And we'll speak to you soon. You've been listening to The Business Marketing Show. You can find us at businessmarketingshow.com, on iTunes, SoundCloud and Stitcher.